Everybody with me?
God bless the flag, we all beating our chest. When it's peace, it's the same old game. The same old players, same old names. Right. My skin is my sin. God bless the flag, we all beating our chest. When it's peace, it's the same old game. The same old players, same old names.
What's good, family? My skin is my sin. Welcome to the show. Got Amber on the line right now. Queen ain't feeling too good. I think she's going to call in a little bit. And we got our special guest, Mr. Abraham Bolden, holding on. About to get to him right now and jump this show off correctly. And thank you for all the support. Thank you for all the shares. Truly, truly appreciate it, and we are humbled. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Bolden.
Yes, I'm here.
Hi,
I'm right here.
Can
you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you loud and clear.
All right, that's good. I can hear you too, and thanks for inviting me to your show.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Truly a pleasure. Yeah. This is Jobs, and that's Amber.
All right, Amber and Charles. Okay.
Yes, sir. So if you don't mind, I want to give you an adequate introduction, if that's okay with you.
All right, go right ahead, Amber.
Oh, okay. I just want to introduce everybody to Mr. Abraham Bolden. If you've not heard of him, he has a book called The Echo from Dealey Plaza, and it's the true story of the first African American on the White House Secret Service detail and his quest for justice after the assassination of JFK. It's truly, I kind of got into the story, and it is amazing. And I'm not, I don't throw that around lightly. Would you like to tell them a little bit about your story, sir?
Well, yes. Well, if you want me to just give you a slight narration on it, that's what we'll do. Or if anyone want to ask me questions about what happened. But now, I became the first African-American Secret Service agent to be assigned to the White House detail under President Kennedy. And that occurred on April 28, 1961, here in Chicago at McCormick Place. Now, let me give you a little background on this. I was born in East St. Louis, Illinois. My people were just middle-class, hard-working people. I had 3 sisters and 2 brothers. Now, I graduated from Lincoln High School, and I was quite a musician. And I received a scholarship to Lincoln University and also Millikan University because of my ability to play the trumpet. I wanted to be a musician. I also was interested in the law. Well, when I attended Lincoln University in Jefferson City, Missouri under a scholarship, and I graduated cum laude in 1956, I came back to East St. Louis, Illinois, and this longing to be a policeman and longing to want to enforce the law became like an obsession to me. I just wanted to be a policeman, even though I had jobs pending in being in bands and things like that. I played with a couple of bands around East St. Louis, but I didn't find any satisfaction in it. So after I had graduated, I was married to a beautiful young lady, Barbara Hardy Bolden, and I had known her all of my life. Let me just tell you, give you a little background on her, because she is mostly responsible for all of the success that I've had in life. Barbara and I grew up in the same neighborhood. She grew up a couple of doors down from me, just around the corner. And when we were going to grade school and high school together, I used to kind of pick on her, because she was a skinny little girl and everything, and I would just pick on her, pull her hair, and things that little boys would do to little girls, Well, when we went to high school together, she had a habit of buying one of these big sour pickles, and she had it in this bag. and we were in the French class together. So now every time she would sneak down to take a bite of that pickle, and it used to make my flesh crawl, so to speak, when she would bite through that paper. It would just make my flesh crawl, and here I am, and she knew that bugged me. So here I am trying to speak French and could barely speak English, and she would bite on that paper. So, one day when we were very, very young, I stuck her. She was riding a tricycle right in front of the house. So I took a broomstick and I stuck it through the spokes of the bicycle, and she went tumbling over the handlebars.
Oh, no.
And so she got up. She knew everybody in the family and everything. She went in the house and she told my mother what I had done, and her little knee was bleeding, And so now, when I went into the house, my mom asked me, she said, "Why you keep bothering Barbara?" I said, "'Cause I don't like her. She's skinny and she wears them funny pigtails down her back." She said, my mother told me, she said, "You like her, and the reason that you keep picking on her is because she's not paying you any attention." And so Mom turned out to be right, because I came from home from Easter for Easter vacation in 1955. And Mom said, "Look, Abraham, y'all are kind of moving a little bit too slow. You're going to make me miss my seat in church." She had a seat third row from the back in the center, and that was her seat. And so she said, "I want you to drop me off at church, son, and then you come back and pick up the rest of the family." So I dropped my mom off at church. And on my way back home, I saw this beautiful girl. I mean, she had on what we call a hula hoop dress back then. You probably don't even know what that is, but it's one of those dresses that had a steel hoop like at the bottom of it, and it made it swing, like a circle back and forth. And my wife, Barbara, she was working that hoop too. And I looked over and I saw this girl. I said, "Wow." I said, "That's really a pretty girl there," and I went back around the block, and I went around the block again, and I said, "Hey, that looks like somebody I know. That looks like Barbara." She was about 18 then, and I had been away to college for about 3 years. And it's a whole lot of difference between the 16-year-old girl and the 18-and-a-half-year-old girl. And so it was quite a difference. So I went around the block and I blew the horn out again, and I waved, and she waved back, and I went back around again, but she had gone up the stairs into the church. But anyway, make a long story short, we got married, and we got married over her uncle's house in 1955, and when the Reverend said that I now pronounce you man and wife, my mother couldn't wait. She walked right up there in that dining room where we were married and said, she put her finger in her face and said, "I told you so." My wife and we stayed married. Now we stayed married 49 years until she passed away on December the 27th of 2005. We were married 49 years, and she gave me 3 wonderful children, a daughter and two sons who have turned out just magnificent, being that all that happened. But anyway, my wife, she was an ardent newspaper reader. So one day she was reading the Sunday newspaper. We were living in East St. Louis and living with her parents up over upstairs. And my wife was looking in the paper. She said, "I know you're supposed to go down to Southeast Missouri and start teaching." She says, "But I see a job in here that you might be interested in since you've been talking about being a policeman." And she said, "It's for Pinkerton National Detective Agency." And so I told her, I said, "Look, Barbara, those people are not going to hire no Negro. You can forget about that. They have Negro guards, but they're not going to hire a detective." She said, "Well, you never know. You can't defeat yourself." She said, "Here, take this advertisement here," and say, "Go over there Monday." So I put on my best suit, my Buster Brown shoes, and I went over there, and I went up there on the 12th floor where Pinkerton was located, 705 Olive Street in St. Louis, Missouri. And I told a young lady that was sitting there typing and working on a switchboard. Now, y'all probably don't know what a switchboard is either. Some of you young whippersnappers around there probably don't know what a switchboard is. But, you know, you pull a plug in and you would connect the telephone with wires and things like that. That was a switchboard. If you don't know what it was, look it up in the dictionary. But anyway, this little switchboard operator said, "Yes, sir." I said, "I came to apply for the job in Pinkerton National Detective Agency." She says, "We're not hiring." And so I wasn't going to pick it and demonstrate. I wasn't going to do a one-man demonstration out there in front of the building. So I reached for the door. I was going to come on out, peacefully like. And then I thought about my wife had given me that notification, that advertisement in the paper. So I went in my vest pocket and I reached over and handed it to her and said, "Well, there's advertisement in the paper." She said, "Well, we're not hiring Negroes." Well, I mean, here I am in St. Louis, Missouri. I mean, the slave trade. They used to have a slave block right there on Washington Boulevard, downtown East St. Louis, so I wasn't about to start raising no hell down there. Because what had happened is that, we already had that Emmett Till situation that had happened in Mississippi. I'm talking about this is 1956 when I applied for the job, and then Emmett Till had gotten lynched down in Big Money, Mississippi in 1954. So that was just 2 years earlier. So I had plans to just ease on out of there, as long as I was still in one piece, and go head on back home and go down to southeast Missouri. But what happened is that the branch manager happened to be visiting that office. His name was Mr. Mertz, and he overheard the conversation. Mr. Mertz came out there and talked to the secretary and said, "What seems to be the trouble?" And the secretary said, "Well, he's looking for a job, but we're not hiring." Mr. Mertz said, "Yes, we are." So give him an application, have him fill it out, and send him in to talk to me. And so I was hired on that day at the Pinkerton National Detective Agency, becoming the first African-American to become a Pinkerton detective. So now that was, an icebreaker within itself. If I had done nothing but that would have been fine. But see, the wife, as I said, she read the newspaper on Sunday. So she was reading it one Sunday a year later. And she says, "Abraham, the Illinois State Police are hiring state policemen." I said, "Well, I'm doing fairly well." She said, "Yeah, but we can't live on what you're making." So I said, "Okay." I didn't want to become an outlaw or anything. I'd rather teach school than become an outlaw. So I said, "Okay, I'll take the test." So I drove to Springfield, and I took the test. I passed the test and became an Illinois State Policeman in 1957. I went to Illinois State Police Training School in Springfield, Illinois, and graduated, and they stationed me in Peoria, Illinois. Now, Peoria, Illinois had 185,000 people at that time, and it was a sort of a backwoods city. It was sort of country, and I was a state policeman there, and everybody called me Smokey. and I didn't really blame them, because in looking in the mirror at that big hat and everything that I was wearing, I did sort of look like Smokey, So I let them get away with that. So after a while, President, this young senator with this Boston accent was running for president on the Democratic ticket, and his name was Senator John F. Kennedy. Now, being the Illinois State Policeman, we were in direct control of the traffic at Peoria Airport, when this young senator came into Peoria, Illinois, to give a speech in front of the courthouse down on Main Street. So now here I am at the airport with this big hat on and everything. The president's private plane lands, and he gets out and he sits on the back of a big white Lincoln automobile. And this was in about October, I believe, of 1960. All right. Now, in the meantime, I'm still Illinois State Policeman. And so now the president is on the campaign. Now, cut me off anytime you want to because, see, I'd like to tell this story because it's really something that's real close to me in meeting a man like President Kennedy. But let me continue on. Here's what happened. All right. Now, this young – go ahead. Go ahead.
No. Continue. I'm
right,
with you
now,
all the way.
So when the president came to Peoria, I held up all of the traffic so they could come out of the airport, and I waved and he waved. So I asked one of the Secret Service agents who was down there on another matter. He was Special Agent in charge, Fred Backstrom. I happened to talk with them and escorted them around Peoria. And I asked him, I said, Mr. Backstrom, do they have black Secret Service agents in the Secret Service? And he says, I don't think so. He said, but why don't you apply? And we'll see what we can do with it. So I went to Springfield, took the test, finally passed the test on the Schedule A, and they moved me to Chicago, Illinois. I became a United States Secret Service agent. Now, I understand that they had one Secret Service agent already who was from Belize or somewhere, one of the islands there. He looked like us, but he didn't want to be us, if you know what I mean. And so now,
I know what you mean.
Yeah, you know exactly what I mean, don't you? Call me anything but that. You know what I'm saying. So, but anyway, I think the brothers and sisters know what I'm talking about. But anyway, so I took the examination and I came to Chicago, Illinois, and I was stationed with the United States Secret Service here in Chicago. Now, here I am, a new agent, and the president's coming to Chicago. After winning, he beat Nixon by 8,000 votes here in Cook County. Now, the fact of the matter is that Mayor Daley ran a machine here in Chicago. He had a big political machine. I mean, a powerhouse, man. Mayor Daley ran everything that moved around here. He even could order the roaches around in Chicago, and they would do what he said. But, yeah, that's right. The man was a miracle worker. And so now, the president's getting ready to come to Chicago in April, on April the 28th of 1961 to thank Mayor Daley and his goons, his politicians, for putting him over the top here in Cook County. So here, the president's town, I'm a new Secret Service agent, having been sworn in on October the 31st. October 30th, mind you, of 1960. So you can see I didn't have that much time in with the Secret Service. But anyway, we all sitting around in the office, and they're handing out these assignments for the Secret Service agents. Well, now, I had seen one of the posts, one of the plans that they had drawn up, and they had me standing in front of the podium where the president was going to speak. Well, they made a last-minute change, and they put a Chicago policeman in front of the dais where the president was going to speak from, and they moved me down to the washroom on the lower level of McCormick Place. Well, I knew what was going on. You know. I mean, here I am, decidedly black. I mean, there was no question about it, about what I was, you know what I mean? And so I was totally Mr. Black. But anyway, So now, when they did that, me knowing what's going on, I didn't raise heck about it or anything like that because I feel like this. I mean, when you go into an organization, you got to start off at the bottom. I knew I didn't think that I would go in there and be chief of the Secret Service and be hugging the president and all that kind of stuff. I figured, it would take at least a year before I could become the chief. But anyway, so now here it's 8:30 at night. And I'm standing down there twiddling my thumbs, I am standing there. I bought a special suit for it, too. And I got it from Sears and Roebuck. I never will forget it. It cost me $30, man. And that was a good suit back in those days because it had 2 pair of pants to it, too. And I shined up that pair of bust-bound shoes I had. And, put on some clean socks and everything, made sure, and my wife made sure my shirt was all ironed and everything. And she did all this. I'm knowing that I'm going to be standing downstairs. Now, the chances of me seeing the president is slim to none. So now that's what I figured, So I'm standing there on my post, and at 8:30 I hear the motorcade come up, and they stopped right on the side of McCormick Place for the president to get out. The band starts playing the banjos and all this. Here come the prayers. Here come the prayers. And there are cameras flashing. The newspaper men are stumbling all over each other and everything. And I'm trying to rubberneck and look up those flights of stairs to see what's going on. All I wanted to do was see the president's shoes. That's all. That would have been good for me. But anyway, I'm rubbernecking, trying to look up those steps, and then I look back up again, and lo and behold, here comes the president down the steps. The first thing he wanted to do when he got to McCormick Place was use the washroom. And there I stood. There I stood.
You met the president for the first time in the washroom.
Now you talk about fate. You talk about fate. I mean, I had more chance of meeting him at home than I did in front of that washroom. So anyway, that's what I thought. Because the president, he's got a whole lot of places he can take a dump. He can do it practically anywhere in Chicago. But anyway. So the president comes down, and I figure I'm standing in the way. I weighed about 220 pounds then, and I was all man. That was in B.C. before the crash, before it crashed from my chest down to my belly. So I was solid packed. And so I'm trying to get out the way because I know I was blocking the door, but my feet was kind of heavy, and I moved kind of slow because I couldn't believe what I was saying. So the president walked up, and he stood right in front of me. And he looked at me, and he smiled. And I started wondering, what's going on here? The president looked at me and said, "Are you a Secret Service agent, or are you one of Mayor Daley's finest?" And I looked at him, I said, "I'm a Secret Service agent, Mr. President." One of the other agents said, "That's Mr. Bolden." Say he's the new agent here in Chicago. And the president, we were still shaking hands, and he smiled, and what a genuine smile. That was one genuine president. I'm telling you, and I could just feel it, that he was sincere about all of the campaign messages that he had delivered to the people. What he wanted to do was establish an equal playing field. He didn't want to give anybody no breaks. He didn't want to give anybody a special ladder to climb up on or do any of these things. But he wanted all of the citizens of America to have the same opportunity. That was his goal, and that was his only goal. And he was just hell-bent on making this become a reality. But anyway, he looked at me and he says, "Mr. Bolden," he says, "have there ever been a Secret Service agent assigned to the presidential detail in Washington, D.C.? I said, "Not to my knowledge, Mr. President." And he looked at me seriously. He says, "Would you like to be the first?" I almost fainted. I said, "Yes, sir, Mr. President." I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it, people. I just couldn't believe. Here's the president of these United States of America, the most powerful man on earth. And he's talking to me, asking me, did I want to come to Washington, D.C. with him? Oh, man, I'm telling you, it was unbelievable. And so he went into the washroom. I said, yes, sir, Mr. President. And he said, I'll be looking to see you in Washington, D.C. Well, I figured, he's talking about a couple of years from now or something like that, But anyway, after he came out of the washroom, we shook hands again. He went back up the steps. I just want your listeners to know I didn't wash that hand for about 2-3 days. This was the hand that shook the hand of the President of the United States of America. I'm telling you, I felt so proud. I didn't know what to do. So when I came home that night, the wife said, how did it go? I said, I met President Kennedy. I talked to him and shook his hand. She said, you lying. I said, no, I'm not lying. I'm telling you the truth. I said, he invited me to Washington, D.C. She said, you lied. I said, yes, he did. But anyway, so here we are now. I'm in the office one day, and it's in June, and we get this letter from the White House, from the White House Secret Service agent, who at that time was James Rowley, telling me to report to Washington, D.C. to become on the Secret Service detail in the White House and to report on June the 6th of 1961. I'm telling you, I was really proud. So I beg your pardon?
Oh, no, I was just agreeing. Continue.
Oh, yeah, I was so proud. The 60s was kind of rough. The 60s was kind of rough for everybody. We were like, it was almost like now. It was almost just like it is right now. And the people were rioting and fighting in the streets, and they were hitting people across the head with hammers and hammer handles and all this kind of stuff. And then we had people who were being lynched down in Mississippi because they were trying to exercise the right to vote. And there were firebombs being thrown. You had the black nationalists, and you had people who wanted to integrate. We were just in a mess, man. Just like right now, this whole country looked like it was going to explode any minute. And so now this is what the president faced when he came into office, President Kennedy. Now, he knew he couldn't just come in ordering people around and telling the Southerners, you got to do this and you got to do that. So a lot of people thought he was moving too fast on civil rights, and a lot of the black African Americans felt that he was moving too slow. So he was caught in the catch-22 situation. In the meantime, here I am in Washington, D.C., and the first thing that disappointed me was when the president left, I think he went to Miami, Florida, on June the 7th or June the 8th. That was a couple of days after I had been on the White House detail. That's the first African American. Now, he was going down to Miami, Florida. And while he was gone, one of the agents who hated President Kennedy, Harvey Henderson, he put a caricature of a black man. He had the lips were built, really stuck out, and he had the little balls painted for his hair and eyes popping out of his head and things like that. He was definitely no artist. But anyway, well, then I saw this memo that he put in there. The man would have flunked art school. There's no question about that. But anyway, so now when I opened the manual that I was studying now, I came across this memo. And this memo said it was from a man named McCarthy who owned a motel down there in Miami. And in essence, it was from the special agent in charge, Gerald Bain, who was in charge of the troops that were surrounding the president at that particular time, and that was James Rowley didn't go. And they were saying that they would not accept a Negro in the motel, and that the best thing that they could do is arrange for me to stay with Andrew Hatcher, who President Kennedy had appointed as the first African-American assistant news. You know the guy that comes out and brief the press on the president, press secretary. Now, here I am. I'm sitting here. I said, now, the president brought me to Washington, D.C. to be the first African-American on the Secret Service detail, and the first prejudice I run into is a memo from the Secret Service. These are the guys supposed to be surrounding the president and carrying out his orders. And so now, when they didn't take me to Miami, Florida with them, I didn't raise no heck or anything like that. But the president, around July the 1st, he went down to Massachusetts, to Hannesport, Massachusetts, where he had his home. Now that's where things got real greasy, because when the president's plane took off, we got on a press plane, which was behind the president's plane. And then we had it arranged where this press plane would land first so that we could get in position to protect the president once that Air Force One landed. All right, now, so we landed at Otis Air Force Base in Massachusetts. And lo and behold, here I am. I'm behind the president, walking along the line with him. People are shaking his hands. You know how you see on television, they're reaching out for him, and he's going down the line, shaking hands and everything. So we get into this automobile. The whole shift was in the automobile. There were it's a big station wagon. There was about 9 of us in there. And we saw this nice-looking whack. She was a whack, had on a uniform, was crisp and clean, man. The sister was sharp, I'm telling you. And one of the agents looked out of the window and said, "There goes a nigger." He forgot that I was sitting there. He said, "There goes a nigger," and I'm looking, hey, what have I got myself into here? You know, and then he looked at me, he said, "Oops." You know, well, I knew better than to hit the guy, because I figured that's what they wanted. They wanted me to look bad. You know, this guy's temper's short. That's the reason we don't have any of them around here. So we went on and went to this little cabin where we were living, and the first thing that the agents did, they pooled some money and they went out and they bought a whole lot of whiskey, a whole lot of beer, and some steaks, and they brought them back and filled the refrigerator up in the little house with all of these drinks, and they were sitting around all day just about until we were going to work at 4 o'clock, and they would be in there boozing up, just drinking, man. And at night, it was bad, man. It was bad. And at night, I heard you know, moaning and groaning and everything, you know, and I couldn't sleep. And it wasn't a noise too much, but, you know, I was a young man then, but that moaning and groaning kind of got to me a little bit. But anyway, I knew what was going on, and I knew that what was going on was wrong, you know, because we're there to protect the President of the United States. Now, our first day there, we're getting ready to go over to the main house, or the presidential, on Nantucket Bay. And the guys got up and drank breakfast. Several of them drank breakfast, a little bit of this and a little bit of that. You know, mixing drinks for breakfast. And they went over there, and one guy, Harvey Henderson, he had a half a pint bottle in this little satchel that we carry with us. I guess he didn't want to run out. But anyway, he took it with him on the compound. Now, they didn't treat me too well. I could tell that I wasn't wanted. I had broken a good old boys club. It was a good old boys club, you know, and they kind of stuck together. Every now and then there was an agent there, Edward Tucker. He was from Chicago here. Tucker treated me real nice, and he acted sort of like a protector of mine. You know, whenever he would see anything look like it would get out of hand, he would step in and make sure that I was spoken for. But anyway, now, when the president was on his vacation, he would go out on the ocean in his yacht during the day, sometime during the day, usually about 11 or 12 o'clock in the day. Now, when the president goes out on the ocean, he goes in a follow-up boat. There's a follow-up boat that follows the yacht. And this follow-up boat, man, is something else. This thing was driven by the Coast Guard. And, you know, I'd never been on a boat that moved that fast. And so I was holding on to that rail so tight my knuckles turned white. And so now we speeding up and down, and you know that must have been really tight for me, my knuckles to turn white, but they turned white. Now, here the speedboat was going all around this yacht, you know, and blowing the horns, sirens and everything, and water was splashing all up, you know, on the side. When the boat would make a sharp turn or something like that, I didn't have sense enough, and I was too scared to let that rail turn that rail loose and get to the other side, because I figured if I got swept over, see, nobody knew that I couldn't swim. And I didn't want the headline in that Boston Times or whatever to be, agent nearly drowned, and the president saves agent, first Negro agent. The president had to save me from drowning. You know? I couldn't live with that. So I held on to that rail. My pants got wet and all that kind of stuff. But I did that for a couple of days. So now, Mr. President Kennedy, being the personality that he was watching these different things. So about July the 3rd, one day before July the 4th, and this was in 1961, I was going down to get on that follow-up boat again. But see, I was ready this time. I had my pants leg rolled up, and I left my socks. I left my socks and my shoes, and had them laying on the other side of the boat. So I was ready to go then, man, but I still couldn't swim. But anyway, I'm getting ready to get on this follow-up boat. And the president calls my supervisor, Harvey Henderson, over there and says he talked to him. And Harvey, he's waving his hands in the air and everything. I know the president had to smell that alcohol on him, but that was par for the course with the Secret Service back then. Now, he's waving his hands, and he came over to me. He said, "Bolden, you're on the yacht today." Oh, man, was he seething, man. His tongue was smoking. The man was so mad his tongue was smoking, and his eyes looked like they were about to pop out of his head. And so I climbed back up the ladder, and I went and got on the back of that yacht. And now here I am. I'm sitting in this big leather chair, you know, where you sit when they fishing. And you know that's where usually the fishermen sit on the back of the yacht and throw that thing over there in the water. You know, well, this was leather chair. I mean, this was real leather too. First time I sat in a leather chair that big. You know, I'd never sat in a leather chair that big. And I mean, that was real leather, too. And when I sat down, it seemed like it hugged me. It was just right, too, for my bottom. But anyway, I sat there and I'm looking and in the breeze, wondering, you know, what would happen if the boat sank or anything, because I'd have to go down with the boat. but all of a sudden, the cabin door opened, and this guy, Navy, this guy, he's a Navy guy, and you know, is one thing about the Navy men, they clean, man. You can't out clean a Navy man. Look, you could look down at his shoes when he was walking. You could see the sun and the clouds and everything mirroring from his shoes. That's just how his shoes look. And he walked over to me and he was carrying a tray. You know, well, I wasn't scared or anything like that, but if I'd have been down south, I probably would have been scared wondering what he going to put on that tray. But anyway, he walked over to me. He walked over to me and he said, the president would like for you to have lunch. So, wow. And he set the tray down. And, man, I looked, and it was some clam chowder soup, man. And the spoon, I looked at the spoon because it was shining so much. I looked on it, it said, sterling silver, man. That wasn't that stuff I used to eat with. I don't know what we used to eat with at home, but whatever. But this was real silver. You see what I'm saying? I looked at it, and it said silver. Now, don't forget. Now, I've been poor all my life. You understand? And the only silver that I had seen was on television, and it was Tono's horse. He said, I owe silver. That's the only silver I knew about. But anyway, this is what happened. And so I sat there and I ate that clam chowder soup. I wanted to take my shoes off and everything and get real comfortable, you know, like I would do at home. But I said, I better not do that. You know, I don't want to bring home down uphill with me. But anyway, so we went on the ocean and we floated around and everything. Jacqueline Kennedy, she takes off her robe and she dives overboard and she's just swimming back and forth, you know, and everything. And I'm looking, I say, oh man, this must be the life. Now we get back to the hotel, the little house where we stand. Now this guy Harvey Henderson. Now we back at the house. Now we've been on a boat, we've been on a yacht. And I got over the seasickness and everything, and I had my clam chowder soup. And now here we sitting around and watching the news. It's about 5:30 in the afternoon. And this guy Harvey Henderson, I later found out that he was from Mississippi, and he is the shift leader. And he looked at me and said, Bolden. I said, yeah, Harvey. He says, I want to tell you something, and don't you ever forget it. I said, yeah, Harvey. He said, you a nigger. You'll always be nothing but a nigger. You were born a nigger, you're going to die a nigger, so act like one. That's what my supervisor told me. You know, now, when a man looks at a 220-pound black man and said something like that, you don't know if the guy going crazy. And I got a .357 Magnum on my side with 6 rounds in it and was an expert shot. You understand? So now I said, now President Kennedy probably wouldn't like this. But now let me tell you what really set me off. It wasn't so much that I was in danger. It's when that I walked out on the porch and I heard him talking about the president saying he was a nigger lover and somebody should blow his brains out. I couldn't believe my ears. I said, these are Secret Service agents. Standing on the back of his car talking about the man needs his brains blown out. I said, my God, this is serious, man. This ain't nothing to play with here. Talking about Harvey said, if somebody take a shot at him and I have to give my life for it, I'm not going to give my life for it. The nigger lover.
Wow.
Yeah, okay, so now I'm trying to figure this out. And so now we're going to leave there on the 5th of July. I know they had the big party on the 4th. I just stayed in the room while all the other agents, they went there and they went on the 4th of July party on the Kennedy compound and everything. So I just stayed in the room and I was just trying to think, is this really going on? Are these guys really serious about not performing the duty that the American people had appointed them to do? Are they really saying that they're on a job to give their life for the president and protect the president of these United States of America, and they saying if something happened, they wouldn't protect him? I couldn't believe my ears. This was the worst thing that I could hear, so I had to make a choice. Now, I know if I stay there and bring this up to the authorities and nothing happened to these guys as a result of that, I might as well do a back bend and kiss my rear end goodbye. Because, see, you understand what I'm saying? I might as well kiss it goodbye, man. So I say I got to leave here in order to try to get something done about this situation. So what I did, I went on July the 5th in to talk to the office of the chief of the United States Secret Service, who was at that time U.E. Barman. And I told him flat out, you got rebellion among these agents. That these agents are saying that some of these agents, not all of them, there were some good agents on the detail. John Reedy was a good agent, very good agent. Bill Blank was a real good agent. But then you had some bad apples too, like Foster. Foster was a bad apple. Foster was the one who said, there goes a nigger, and guess who his protection source was? He was to protect Caroline Kennedy. See, he was her guard. So now can you imagine a young 4 or 5-year-old girl being surrounded and being cared for by a Secret Service agent that would call a whack, a person who has dedicated their life to the defense of the United States of America? There goes a nigger. You see, so disrespectful. So I told the chief of the Secret Service, I said, you're going to have to do something. I said, because this drinking, this alcoholism, this flirting around with women, the misuse of the automobile, the government automobiles, this is a sickness within the Secret Service. U.E. Barman told me, well, we'll look into it. See, you only been on the detail about 30 days. Some of these things look serious to you, but they you know, boys will be boys and all this kind of stuff. Oh, all right. So he says, well, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going back to Chicago. He said, you getting off the detail? I said, yes, sir. The fastest thing smoking, I'm getting out of here. And so now I came on back to Chicago. The Inspector Kelly came to Chicago on a routine visit. The first thing I did when I got back to Chicago is told Harry Gegline, who was my supervisor at that time, about what had happened on that detail. I reported it to my special agent in charge here in Chicago. Then I went to the assistant special agent in charge, James Burke, and told him what happened. We had a meeting on it. And we sat around the table and discussed it. And what James Burke told me, well, you're thin-skinned. You know, you got to learn how to take some things. I said, yeah, but what about this deal with the president? My thin skin has got nothing. No, I don't like being called a nigger. But my thin skin has got nothing to do with the protection of the President of these United States. I told him, I say, these men have lost focus. They're talking about President Kennedy when the presidency is at stake. When they say that they're not going to protect the president, then they're saying that they're not going to uphold the Constitution of these United States. And that is the serious fact in here. And so they told me, well, you will learn. As things go along, you'll see things our way. And that nobody seemed to take me serious. All right, now, let's move on up to 1963.
Okay.
In the meantime, I'm doing quite a job. I'm an outstanding agent under John Hanley. I busted more counterfeiting plants in 1962 and 1963. At the end of 1961, the beginning of 1962 and 1963, I busted more counterfeit plants than all of the agencies across the United States combined. I saw more check cases than most of the other agents. In fact, I was doing so well that when I would bring a case almost to a conclusion, the special agent in charge called me in and said, "No, I see you got this almost wrapped up. Why don't you give this case to agent?" I said, "Give this case to agent so-and-so for what?" Because he hadn't had an arrest for a couple of... No, brother, no, I'm not going to do that. They say, "You're not a team player." I said, "I guess not, but I'm not going to be out there busting my behind in the snow and rain and everything and working up these cases and everything and hand them off to somebody to take credit for them. No, I'm not going to do that." No, as a matter of fact, I went and looked in the mirror when I got home. I said, "Do I look like that?" I was trying to find out how a person that would do that look. And if he looked like me, well, maybe so, I guess. But anyway, now we started getting these tremendous threats against the life of the president. They didn't like him anyway. So now as I said, we had the demonstrations, sit-ins were going on. In the meantime, we started getting these threats against the life of the president. And these were organized. These were not nuts talking about, around a beer half drunk saying, "I'm going to kill the president." These people were professional. These people were organized. They came from organizations. We intercepted a message in 1963, a discussion between one of our informants and a man named Miltier. And this informant said, "You really intend to kill the president?" And Miltier said, yeah, it's a done deal. And
wow.
The informant said, "Well, how are we going to get him?" Said, "Well, we're going to get him from a tall building using a rifle with a telescopic sight." Yeah, and that's exactly the way the president died. But anyway, we had knowledge of this. See, we had knowledge of this before November 22nd of 1963. We had that knowledge. In the meantime, there's a guy in Chicago who had made the statement that the president was about to be assassinated. So we had an undercover agent with him. And the guy who made the statement was Escovedo. His name was Homer Echeverria. He made the statement. He said the Jews have put up the money and the president's going to be assassinated. This was before November the 22nd. In the meantime, we got a telephone call about a lady in Chicago in a rooming house down around North Avenue near Weston, and that's where a lot of the Cubans hung out at that particular time. It was near Volvo dealership, as I recall, and she went into a room and she saw high-powered rifles somewhere in the room. I don't know if they were on the bed, in the closet, or up under the closet, or where, but she saw them, and she called the FBI. And the FBI called the Secret Service. Mr. Martineau, who received the call, was saying, well, we don't have time to go after that. We don't have time to do that. We don't have enough manpower. So he called Washington, D.C., and Jim Rowley, who had become chief of the Secret Service, told him that we had to look into it. So now it's in November now. It's in November, and the president is scheduled to come to an Army Air Force football game here that they have annually at Soldier Field. And now the president was due here on November the 2nd. Now we're getting close to that date, and the lady sees these rifles. So we at least I put two and two together and said that these people are probably going to try to assassinate the president here in Chicago. You see what I'm saying? And now, so 2 agents were assigned to the case. They were assigned to go there and interview the lady and then try to put a tail on whoever these Cubans were. They said it was 2 Cubans and they were being visited by a European up in the room where they saw the rifles. All right, now, so they put J. Lloyd Stocks, Tom Strong, Agent Tom Strong, to follow these guys, and a couple of more agents in there. I think Agent John Griffith was one of them too. And they put them in there to try to get a tail on these guys and follow them and see what they were up to. Well, they blew it the first night. The agents blew the surveillance the first night. One dummy, J. Lloyd Stocks, pulled up along beside the guys who were loading something in the alley. And I happened to be listening on my radio because they didn't let me go up on the north side as a black agent and investigate white folk. That's just the way it was. But anyway, they pulled up alongside of the car, and his radio went off blasting. Where are your car 620 or whatever his car was? And the guy looked around. That was it. The guys jumped in the car, took off, and fled. They lost them in traffic. The investigation was blown. Washington, D.C. was notified, and it must have had some credibility because we got the message the next morning that the president had canceled his visit to Chicago for that Army Air Force football game. Now, that's the way it went down. Now, here I am. I had been complaining about different things that were going on within the Secret Service, the drinking, the cabaret, the lack of agents doing their duties. And I was catching hell, man. I was catching so much hell that I applied for a job up in Wisconsin at one Air Force base as a security agency. But the Secret Service, Mr. Martineau, would not certify me to leave, and he told them that I was under doing some type of investigation where they couldn't release me out of the Chicago area. So they were sticking me in the Chicago area. Then on November the 18th, I get a telephone from the Internal Revenue Department through the Chief of the United States Secret Service to report to Washington, D.C. right away that they got an investigation now this is the 18th. This is about 3 days before the president was assassinated. Now, I had talked to everybody until I was blue in the face. And that's a lot of talking. But I was blue in the face telling them the president was in danger. And I wasn't the only one saying it. There were some agents who agreed with me who had been on that detail. And so now, when they sent for me and I went to Washington, D.C., and I talked to one of the super secret intelligence division special agent in charge, and what they approached me with, they wanted to take all of my identification, wipe Abraham Bolden off the face of the earth, substitute me with another name, new identification, and put me on the cover where even my wife would know where I was. Oh, you know, like I said, man, come on. I mean, I'm from East St. Louis, you know. I know I'm from the back alley, but give me a break, man. Do I look like that? And so I told him, no, I couldn't do anything like that. I couldn't accept any position where even my wife don't know where I am and what name I'm using. No, I can't do that. All right, so I came back to Chicago. But before I left Washington, D.C., you'll find in the Echo from Dealey Plaza that I had a premonition, I had a vision that the president was in fact going to be assassinated. No question about it. When I walked by the White House, going back to the YMCA where I had registered, there was a cloud that was set down on the second floor of the White House building. And no matter what I did, I could not see the second floor of that White House. Could not see it. I could see everything else around it. I looked at the federal building that was next to the White House and all the buildings around it, but not the White House. I couldn't see the second floor of the White House. I could see the first floor. So this was really strange, man. And so I read that as an omen that something was about to be kicked off. So I came back to Chicago. And I had a cold reception, as I bring out in Echo from Dealey Plaza. The chief special agent in charge, Monroe, he ringed me out good, man, to accuse me of trying to select my assignments and be the boss of the office and all of this kind of stuff. I said, don't matter what you say, Mr. Monroe, I am not going to take any assignment where they wipe me off the face of the earth. I'm just not going to do it. You know, I joined up to be a Secret Service agent, not a CIA agent or anything like that. So now, here we come into November 22nd, 1963. The president's going to Dallas, Texas. Now, we had these threats against the president here in Chicago. As a matter of fact, in Chicago, they picked up a man off of Ali that someone tipped off and said that he was here to engage in a plot to assassinate President Kennedy. And in the back of his trunk, when he was pulled over by the Chicago police, he had high-powered rifles, explosives, dynamite sticks, and everything in the back of the car. And his alibi was that he worked for the CIA and that he had been employed by the CIA. Now, to confirm that, nothing happened to Vali with all the explosives that he had. I think they charged him with concealing a weapon or something like that. Then he disappeared. Now, on November the 22nd of 1963, I was interviewing a man concerning some forged checks at a tavern down at 37th Street in Indiana. He had a small liquor store down there, and there was an awful lot of forged checks that were coming through there. I kind of suspected that he was engaged in it. When about noontime, or a little thereafter, I saw on the little round TV, this TV was about a 5-incher behind the bar. He said that President Kennedy had just been shot. So I was mortified. As a matter of fact, I ran to the car so fast I left my briefcase laying on the counter and had to go back and run back in there and get it. So here I tear down Michigan Avenue and go back to the office in downtown Chicago, and it's just consternation in there. Joe Noonan, one of the agents, was walking back and forth waving his arms, hollering and shouting, I told you they were going to get the president killed. I told you that. I told everybody. I said, Yeah. And one of the secretaries came to me crying and said, I told Mr. Martin, I heard that the president had been shot. He said, what else is new? And didn't even look up from his desk. And so that was the kind of attitude that we ran into. Yeah. It was just that bad. Now, not only that, here's what happened. On the 26th, after the president had been assassinated, and Lee Harvey Oswald had been assassinated by Jack Ruby, on the 26th of November, there was a meeting in the special agent in charge's office attended by 2 CIA agents, the FBI. There was another Inspector Kelly from Washington, D.C., and there also was another gentleman there that was from some department. I don't know where he was from. I'd never seen him before. But one of the secretaries told me who they were because they had to show identification as they came in the door. Now, James Burke, who I had complained to about the activities of the Secret Service, he was one who was investigating the assassination in Dallas. He came to Chicago. Inspector Kelly was the chief investigator for the Secret Service in Dallas, Texas. He came to Chicago. When they broke up that meeting, Mr. Martineau had the secretary, her name was June Marie Tapinas, had her to gather up all of the files in regard to the Echeverria case, in regard to the other cases that we had handled in Chicago, especially of the gentlemen that were the 2 Cubans and things that were here with the high-powered rifles, and they gathered all those reports together. Now, the Echeverria report, where Echeverria had said before that Kennedy was assassinated that the president was going to be assassinated, he redictated those reports to indicate that Echeverria was talking about President Johnson. Because I heard the agent next door to me who had done the investigation was complaining about it. He says that that's not the way it went down, and that Martineau was redictating his reports, which were not true. They were talking about President Kennedy, and now they bundled up these files, put them on a jet, and airlifted them to Washington, D.C., and Paul J. Paterni, who had been a Chicago special agent in charge, took those documents from the airplane once it landed at Washington, D.C. Now, none of these people were called before the Warren Commission that was formed by Johnson in January of 1965. Echeverria never appeared because there was no reason to bring these people in, because those reports had been doctored to cover up to the American people who have every right to know what happened to their president. And that's the reason it's important for young people like you. You're going to have to carry on the fight, because these kind of destroyers of democracy that had infiltrated our government and had changed the course of history by killing a president of the United States at noon, sunshiny day, in the middle of the street with over 100 people watching. You see, it's an affront to the people of America to conceal the documents as to what really happened in Dallas, Texas. And that's where you young people are going to come in. You're going to have to keep the pressure on. I'm 80 years old. There are researchers now who are about my age. Some of them are older than me even. Probably not uglier, but they're older. And you're going to have to take this serious, because there are people who do not have the thrust and push for democracy as their main goal. And you can see, brothers and sisters who are listening, that they're trying to divide us. They're trying to divide black against white, police against citizen. They're trying to divide man against woman. They're trying to divide Christians against Islam. They're trying to create such a division that we cannot focus on the real problem. And that real problem is the taking away of the freedom of the people of the United States of America. And don't have no bones about it. This is not a black and white issue. This is not Islam, Christianity, Buddhism issue. This is an issue of the people of America standing up and taking control of their government, and it's going to be up to you. If you want this form of government, if you want to preserve a democracy, you're going to have to do what is necessary to get that job done, and that means thinking. You see, you can march, you can hoop and holler, you can clap your hands, you can sing, but until you think yourself out of this situation using hardline logic, reading, researching, this is what you have to do, because things are not going to change unless you change them. And it's going to take people holding hands together, see, and getting this job done. We are the people. We the people. The Constitution does not say a chosen few among us, or 1%, are guaranteed this right. It is we the people, and you are those people. And don't fall for the okey-dokes. This is the main thing I want to get before I leave. Don't fall for the old okey-dokes of black against white, Jew against Arab. Don't fall for those okey-dokes. These are diffractions away from what's really happening. And what is going on is that the people are trying to establish an international government that will have control of all of you young people. You think it's bad now. You just wait, because there are plans in motion to not just eliminate black people or white people. They're going to cut down the number of people that inhabit this whole earth in order that a few that are left can live high on the hog, so to speak, and control the rest of us and all of the resources of the earth. So you got a real job to do. So that means that we're going to have to use self-discipline. We're going to have to know about ourselves, know the history. We're going to have to be a cooperative people. We're going to have to be a loving people. We're going to have to be a logical people. See, a lot of our old people right now, our old leaders, their time is up, because they are not leading with logic. They're leading with emotion. Emotion never solves a problem. You can cry, and you can holler, and you can wipe tears until hell freezes over. But until you apply your mind in a logical situation, until you use thought, until you use your developed sense of intuition to solve these problems, you're just wasting your time, and you're just waiting until they grab you up and throw you in the back of the van and carry you away. Now, I'd like to take questions from your audience if anybody's listening.
Sir, trust me when I say this, we're not just listening. We taking this trip with you, sir, and I am so humbled, and I know I speak for everybody that is listening right now. I'm proud of you, and I am honored to be on the other end listening to you, seriously. And if you don't mind, because I did the research, and I looked into your whole story, you talk as long as you want. We got till 9 o'clock. If you want to take calls, we'll take calls. If you want to finish the story, because you got people hanging on your every word, whether you know it or not.
But I just would like to let the people know it was rough. It was hard for my family, especially my family. See, when you take a young man from his wife and his children, my children were young, they suffered too. My mother and father suffered. America suffered, even though they may not know it now. But the judicial systems suffered. I was tried in a court that did not respect one constitutional right that I had. Not one. Not one. The jury was deliberating in my first trial. They accused me of soliciting a bribe and some kind of conspiracy they accused me of. Now the man who was supposed to be my go-between to solicit the bribe was a man named Frank Jones. I had arrested Frank Jones for counterfeiting United States $5 bills. I had arrested him twice. Now, if he had been convicted, he would, since he had criminal records in the past, this would have been his third conviction, and he would have been sentenced for life in prison. And they used him as a witness against me, saying that I sent him to do something for me. This is just illogical as it can be. Now, here's the thing. When the jury was deliberating on whether or not I was guilty or innocent, the judge called the jury out in the first trial and says, in my opinion, the evidence shows that the defendant is guilty of counts 1, 2, and 3 in the indictment. Now, you may continue to deliberate, taking into consideration what I have just told you. Now, you're free to disagree with me, but continue to deliberate with what I just told you. That made him a juror. You see, he became a judge and a juror, which is constitutionally invalid. Now, when that jury didn't convict me because one black woman hung him up 11-1, they set another trial in August, August the 3rd of 1964. We asked for a new judge. Now, the rules of criminal procedure says that any time a motion for a change of venue or a new judge is presented to the court, that court is disqualified from ruling on that motion. In other words, Judge Perry, who was the judge in the first trial and made that statement to the jury, and we asked for another judge, Judge Perry was incompetent to even listen to that motion. It should have been reassigned. It should have gone to the chief judge of that court for reassignment to another judge to hear whether or not we had a case. That was not done. Judge Perry said, I'll give him a trial. I gave him a fair trial the first time, and he'll get another one. And he ruled himself the head over the second trial. So now here's what happened on the second trial. It lasted about 4 days, and the jury went out on August the 11th of 1964. At 5:30 p.m., the judge came and into the courtroom, called my attorney, and me up to the bar and said he was closing the courtroom and the jury would be through deliberating for the night. But if by the next morning, if they came to an agreement that verdict would be sealed. And I talked to my attorney. I said, well, there's no way that they're going to get here before me. I'll be down there at 8:30 because I want to be there when the jury is deliberating because we knew what happened to the first juror. But anyway, the judge had one of the U.S. attorneys to take me and my attorney. He emptied the courtroom, the court building. They put a chain on the door and locked everybody that was not a government employee out of the building, not just out of the courtroom, out of the building. Now here you have all of these government people in there, the Secret Service, FBI. They're in there with the jury, and we locked outside. And the jury is supposed to bring in a verdict the next morning, continue to deliberate, and bring in a verdict the next morning. And on the way home that same night, I hear a flash on the radio that said we had been gone an hour, that the jury just reached a verdict in the Bolden case.
Wow.
Yeah, the jury just reached a verdict. Now, this jury happened to be an all-white jury. Now, I'm not condemning them because they were white, because I have seen some people will get justice. All white people doesn't just, it's a prima facie case because you're black, you're guilty. That doesn't set well with all of them. But when you have a judge to keep something secret, he has a better chance of keeping it secret away from blacks if the group is all white. And he knew that. Now, what did we do? We appealed the case. During the appeal, because on January the 20th, in one of the witnesses' case, a witness against me, Joseph Spagnoli admitted before the court that he committed perjury in my trial, and further said that the assistant U.S. attorney told him to commit the perjury. Not only did he tell him, he wrote it down so that he wouldn't forget it. What? And further, Joseph Spagnoli introduced this piece of paper written in the handwriting of Richard Seitz, who was assistant attorney. In his handwriting, he stole it from the U.S. attorney's office and presented it in court. Now, you would think that the judge would have called me in, dismissed the case, and that's it, but it didn't go like that. We went to appeal. The judge said that no matter what happened in the trial, he was not going to reverse the decision and give me another trial. So we went to the Court of Appeals. During the argument before the Court of Appeals in October of 1965, the attorney, assistant state's attorney, was called before the Court of Appeals, the chief judge of the Court of Appeals, Circuit Court of Appeals here in Chicago, and asked point blank, did you solicit perjury in the trial United States versus Abraham Bolden? He asked him that 3 times. The third time, the assistant United States attorney said, Your Honor, I refuse to answer on the grounds that my answer may tend to incriminate me. Wow. He took the Fifth Amendment as to whether or not he had solicited perjury in a federal criminal trial. And the Court of Appeals still affirmed and upheld a conviction. So you can see the grips that I was in. You can see what they had set up for me. So I appealed to the United States Supreme Court. They denied certiorari. Now here I am. I had become a supervisor working at Ingersoll Products Division of Borg-Warner Corporation here in Chicago. I had found a job. I was the midnight foreman for the whole plant. I had worked myself up from the docks and had become the midnight supervisor of the whole plant on the midnight shift. On June the 26th of 1966, they came to my door. 2 U.S. Marshals came to my door and said, certiorari has been denied. The judge wants you locked up right away. And my wife was at work. I said, I'm not going anywhere. They say, well, the judge says lock you up before 4 o'clock. It was 3:30 then. And now I wonder why the judge want me locked up so fast. Because normally they give a man 10 days, 15 days, or whatever to surrender or to turn himself into prison. I had been a Secret Service agent. They had everything. They knew everything about me. They knew things about me that I didn't know. They went up all down in Mississippi and talked to some relatives that I didn't even know about doing my background check. I was clean as an expensive whistle. I was clean, man. You know, back then to get a job like that, do you realize how clean you had to be? If they had found a bump or a pimple on my nose anywhere, I never would have got that job. They investigated me up and down. Relatives that I didn't even know called my dad and said, did you know the FBI was looking for your son? They weren't looking for me. They were investigating. But anyway, now, so they sent me to the penitentiary. Now, you young people, you probably hear that when a policeman gets locked up, they said, well, they're going to send him to this institution here because he was a policeman. They're going to send him to this camp here and keep him out of circulation because they don't want to endanger his life. They sent me to Terre Haute Penitentiary where I had sent 90% of the people that I had convicted of a crime was at Terre Haute. And they put me in the penitentiary in Terre Haute, Indiana, with all of those convicts that I had sent there. And they moved me from there into Fort Leavenworth. I stayed at Fort Leavenworth about a week. And the reason that they got me out of there is because I got too many threats at Leavenworth. There were people there who never will see the streets again. Some of them probably dead now. So one more dead cop wouldn't mean anything to them. They would see it as a medal, as some kind of award to kill a Secret Service agent. Oh man, that would be a big thing for them. Okay, then they sent me from there to Springfield, Missouri, Springfield Medical Center in Springfield, Missouri. Now, let me tell you something about Springfield Hospital. Everybody knows that that's a danger. Whenever they send a convict there, you're in big trouble because that institution is a conglomerate of 4 different prisons. They have the transportation part of the prison, which is, since Missouri was centrally located, inmates that are being moved from the east to the west or from the west to the east, they use that prison as a terminal point where they would drop them off and take them halfway, and then they would take them to a prison on the East Coast. Now, that's one function of Springfield. The other function was that it was a hospital. People who had diabetes or needed a heart operation or needed some type of rehabilitation for health reasons, they also were sent there. And then there was a third faction there, which was for people who were the camp. Now, they assigned me to the camp. The camp personnel took care of everything around the institution. They did the grass cutting. We did the food service. We did everything that it took manpower to do to keep the prison running so far as services are concerned. Then they had the dreadful 2-1 East, which is the psychiatric division. Now, that's the division where they kept the Birdman from Alcatraz in. They sent him to 2-1 East. You've heard of the Birdman from Alcatraz?
Yes, sir.
Well, if you haven't, just look it up. Well, that's where they had him. All right, now, during that particular time where I was in the camp, at about 3 o'clock, 3:30 in the morning, 2 guards came to me in the camp and told me to follow them. And we walked from the camp during the middle of the night over to the psychiatric division. And they opened the door, and I could hear the people screaming in there, the inmates screaming and hollering. And when they took me into that intake unit, they stripped me naked, brother. Bent me over, looked everywhere, took all my clothes, took my belt. They slammed me in a cell by myself. And then the next morning before daybreak, 4 guards came and stood in front of this steel door, this big, massive steel door. I could only see through this little small hole. And they unlocked the door and they said, medication time. I said, medication time? I'm not on medication. They said, you are now. I said, I'm not going to take it. They said, you're going to take it in orally or we're going to shoot it in your ass. It's up to you.
Wow.
Isn't that something? And so now here I am. They are now trying not only to take away my physical freedom, but also my mental freedom. And I couldn't let that happen. So when you read in the Echo from Dealey Plaza how I defeated them and how Almighty God put his hand over me, he put his hand over me and says, the ocean shall not go any further. You're not going to drown this man because I have something else for him to do. And when they were working their plan, you see, then the Almighty was working his. See, he was working his. The chief of the classification and parole called me, came to my cell, and says, Bolden, we're going to declare you insane. That's what he told me.
Wow.
He didn't like me. And he was a so-called brother, too. He didn't like me. He says, you screwed up a good job, you run your mouth too much, and so when you get out of here, you won't even know your name. Now, this comes from the chief of the classification and parole, Mr. Julius Nichols. All right, so they had it all set up for August. They were going to take me before the committee, reclassification committee. Listen, my people, I'm telling you the truth. They were going to set me up before the classification committee. Now, the way that committee works, nobody can be reclassified. They wanted to take my classification from camp and classify me as psychiatric because I had stood up against those who had let our president die in Dallas, Texas, and did nothing to protect that man.
Wow.
Now, here I am. I'm waiting until August the 8th, where we're going before this committee. So now the guard comes and get me on that morning. I think it was a Friday morning. We went down to the committee meeting room. This big, long mahogany desk was there. We had, everybody was there, the warden, associate warden, Mr. Gronska. We had another warden there, Mr. Allen. They all sitting around this table there. This is the hearing that they give you before they change your count number to a P number. Once you get a P number, they can keep you there until you die. The only person that can get you out once they give you a P number is a federal judge. You have to go before a federal judge. Now, here's the thing. Everybody was there that morning except Julius Nichols. But I had missed him at that particular point. It didn't dawn on me at that particular point. Listen at me, y'all, because now I put a book on slideshare.net. You go read that book, what I was taught when I was in there. Now listen. When I sat down in that chair, that leather chair, they said, Bolden, you can go back to the camp. So get all your belongings or whatever you have and go back to the camp. I was shocked. I said, what is this? They sent me through all of this. And now they tell me to go back to the camp. So I grabbed my thing, put them in the pillowcase and everything, and I went on back to the camp. So I got there, and Gus Postel, one of my friends, said, man, we were really glad to see you. So we heard that they were going to change your number to a P number. What happened? I said, Mr. Nichols didn't show up. You know what Gus said? Man, Mr. Nichols is dead. Said last night, Mr. Nichols went home from work, shot his wife in the leg. Now, this is the guy that's going to sign a paper saying that I'm insane. Shot his wife in the leg, ran down the street trying to shoot her again, shot up into another officer's house, ran back home, went down in the basement, got an ironing cord, threw it over the furnace pipes, put the other end around his neck, and jumped off a soda box. Hung himself. Huh? See, that wasn't no accident. See, the mighty powers that be kept me alive so that I could confer with you young people and write and try to direct you to change your attitude about life. Look into life and see the direction that you should be going, not the direction that we have taken already. We're going to have to think, and thinking requires silence and endurance. That's what you have to concentrate on, because I'm going to be long gone after a while. But I want to do everything that I can to make sure that if we're going to have a democracy, I want to set a pattern for you. Stand up. Stand up. Don't be afraid. Hands up. Don't shoot. No, think. We have to think. We have to have self-discipline. Put away that dope. Put away that black-on-black crime. I got the solution to the black-on-black crime. It's on slideshare.net, Abraham Bolden. That's the solution. Get that knowledge which was given to me. And it will guide you through. Let me take a few calls.
I'm sorry, sir. Hold on. Queen, did you want to ask a question? You definitely earned the right. Let me make sure you on.
I'm here.
With me, Queen?
Can you hear me? Yes, I'm here.
Yeah,
can
we can hear you.
Is that Queen
Hi, Mr.
Shanika?
Bowman.
That's Queen
yes,
Shanika.
It's me.
In person? Okay, go ahead with it.
Well, I don't have any questions, but I want you to know that I truly, truly appreciate you calling in. I am very humbled, very honored, and I truly appreciate you. I can't say that enough. And all of our callers are really intrigued with your story, and we are really listening and taking heed to everything that you're saying.
Yes, as I said, when you read the Echo from Dealey Plaza, read it and digest it and see what's going on in there, because there's a special message for people who want to do right in that book. And also on slideshare.net, there's another book there. It's free. It's called From Men to Gods, and it directs you and tells you what the scriptures really mean. What do they say? What do they really mean? And I base it on the Bible. The first 7 days of the Bible. Just read it. Get an understanding of it.
I will, and I started reading your book, and I didn't want to stop, so I'll be finished with that in a few days. It's very interesting, just like your story is that you're telling us.
Well, I had sort of given up, and I was sitting here right where I'm sitting right now in the kitchen. And my wife, I had gone to court, and I had come back home from prison and everything. And I was sitting here looking across my wife. I was waiting on the Bears football game to come on. And my wife looked at me and said, she had been very sick. She said, Abraham, it's time to write the book. I said, what book? She said, a book that you've been talking about you're going to write. When you're going to get on? And I said, well, I tried a couple of times, but that electric typewriter, I got to make too many copies. And I keep making mistakes, and I have to raise 5 sheets of paper at a time. So she says, well, buy a computer. And I said, well, I don't know what kind of computer to buy. My wife got up, and she walked in front of me, went straight to the very telephone I'm talking on now, and said, call my son. My son is a computer analyst. And said, Dad needs a computer. And, I'm sitting up here waiting on a football game. It's only a half an hour away. And I got my popcorn all popped and everything. She talking about going there. So my son said, Mom, okay, I'll be over. She said, no, come now. So he came over, and we went out to one of the stores and picked up a See, my wife kind of ran everything around here, as you can just about find. You get that impression, don't you? Well, I ain't afraid to say it. Yeah, she ran everything around here, and I was just as henpecked as I could be. What she said went. And she was right most of the time. You gentlemen, listen to me now. Most of the time, your wife going to be right. But anyway, I got the computer, and I said, you know what? I said, I can't remember all of those dates and times that I wrote you, the things I put in the letters to you. And I said, I can't remember all of that because a lot of that stuff I threw away. And she said, that's what you think. She said, those letters you was throwing in the wastebasket you were getting from the government and all of these different things. She said, I took them and put them in the suitcase because I knew you'd need them later on.
Wow.
I said, my God. And so I went, and I opened that. I said, oh, gone. I got enough here. I can write that book. So I sat down, and this was in 2006, and I started writing. And she couldn't hardly get me away from that computer because I had everything to document the book, and because I knew people were going to call me a lot. And so I wrote the book and got it published by one of the biggest publishing companies, Random House. That's going, and that was just a gift from God, really.
Yeah, I remember you told me
Amber,
that.
did you want
to I'm
sorry,
honored.
Queen.
Like,
Amber, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. I don't know what to say.
I
Thank
hear you
so
laughing
much.
every now and then. I know I talk country and all that kind of stuff, but I just, you got to be real. You got to be real. Ain't nothing phony going to survive in this world. I'm a serious guy, but I just tell it like it is. I'm from down home. We had chickens in the backyard and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Y'all don't know about that, though. You probably never seen a chicken have. Some of you young people, y'all don't know about all that stuff. I asked a young girl, I said, where you get biscuits from? She said, from Jules.
She said, from where?
Jules Food Market. No, you make biscuits. My mama never did get a biscuit from Jules or anywhere else. She made her biscuits. Yeah. And they were some good biscuits, too. Me and my mother were just as close as white on teeth. I'm telling you. And she was right, too. She was right most of the time, too, especially about marrying Barbara. That's the best move I made was marry Barbara. That's the best move I made. All the rest of them, I don't know whether I did right or wrong, but I do know this. Marrying Barbara was one of them. One of the right ones.
Abraham.
Go right ahead.
I was laughing at your story about the store. Do you want to tell them about the store when you got home?
Oh, Bro Albert. Bro Albert, me, I'm bouncing that ball up against Bro Albert's store.
Yeah.
Oh, shucks. I had on my hobnail shoes and everything. Hobnails had steel toes in the back and the front. And I just thought I was a young man. I guess I was about 14 years old. I was above getting whoopings. And I was out there in front of Bro Albert's store, and we were bouncing the ball up against his window. And it was a hard ball, too. Bro Albert came out and said, little Bolden said, stop bouncing that ball up against you. You're going to break one of my windows. I looked at him. He went back in. I started bouncing the ball again. Lo and behold, it hit his window. So Bro Albert came out and said, I told you, boy, to move on now, little Bolden. And I told him what he could kiss. I told him to kiss it. And Bro Albert closed down his store. He closed down the whole store, walked across the street, and woke my dad up. My dad worked 2 8-hour jobs. And when you wake him up, it better be something serious, because he didn't get that much sleep, you see. And he could do anything. My dad could do anything. He was a carpenter. He could just do it all, lay pipe and everything. And I couldn't outrun him either, to tell you the truth, because he used to play football for Illinois University. But anyway, so I told Brother Albert what to kiss. So he closed down the store and he went over to my house and everything, and I'm around there dragging my feet and everything. Yeah, I told him, And so he came back and opened up the store. He didn't say nothing else to me. And my sister came out there with two plaits in the back of her head, jumping up and down, skipping and going on. Said, Daddy want to talk to you. I said, go tell him I'll be on in a minute. Oh, was I feeling my Wheaties. I mean, I'm starting to grow a little mustache, too. I was bad. I'm telling you. And so my sister went, and she stayed gone a little while and came back and said, Daddy said, come home right now. Well, she went on, and here I am. I'm dragging my foot, coming across the street, just dragging, looking all bad and everything, walked up on the porch. And I walked on the porch, and we had an enclosed porch, and I went to reach for the screen door. And a big black hand came through that screen, I'm telling you, and grabbed me in my collar and snatched me, through the screen door. My dad tore up a screen door, snatching me through it. And the man, I'm telling you, he got that big black belt of his. He had a big black belt. I used to try to hide it a lot of time, but he'd always find it. But anyway, he got that black belt, and he started whooping on me. And I'm telling you, and he kept on saying, I'm kissing it for Brother Albert. I'm saying, my dad beat me so bad, my mother came in the room and said, Daniel, don't kill the boy. I tell you, but from that day to this one, I've never told nobody to do that. I've never. In fact, I get away from people when I hear them say that. I never will forget that last whipping I got. That was before I met Judge Perry, though. But anyway, it's been nice talking with you, and I wish one of you callers would call in, and we can get this thing over.
We have some callers holding. We only got like 10 minutes left on the show, so I'm just going to randomly pick a call for you, okay?
Yeah, all right.
And I hope. My skin is my sin. Caller, are you with me? Hello? No, sorry about. A lot of people listen to the show on their telephone, so sometimes they're not necessarily trying to say anything, and I think you got a lot of us kind of stuck.
Yeah,
your story is just so amazing.
I've been giving.
Hold on, one more time. Let's try another one.
Hello?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
My skin is my sin. Can I help you? Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, hi. This is Mahogany Phoenix. Oh, my God. I was listening to you this evening. Oh, sir, I just say peace and blessings to you, you know, just as a person that is really just searching to be awake and just really understand, you know, how and what we need to do to reunite our people. I mean, this was just very inspiring this evening, very inspiring. And I was really thank you for sharing your story with us. I mean, it's powerful.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Very powerful. And I think courage is not easy. You know, sometimes for myself and a lot of the work that I do, you know, it's like gotta kind of like bite the bullet sometimes and just go with the flow of things just to get things done. And it's just really amazing to listen to, like, you know, how you just would not be moved from your principles.
Yeah.
Were there times and moments where you just felt like you just wanted to just conform?
Well, not really. Not when it came to something as important as the first thing that I evaluated was this: is that we have young men that are off in foreign countries and they're dying for America. Now, we have to step up, too. When we see things that are going awry, especially when it affects our national government, when we see corruption in our national government, we have to be just as willing as the ones that are laying in the foxholes, and we can go and sleep in a nice bed. But we have to stand up, too. So we have to stand up. If we want to have a democracy, then we have to fight for it. You see what I'm saying? Because I don't want my granddaughter, I don't want your granddaughter, I don't want anybody's granddaughter to grow up where they are shooting elected officials down in the street in broad daylight at noontime. This is what's at stake. Are we a nation of civilized people, or are we a nation of fools?
I don't know. Like, I try to work with young people in my community, and, like, teenagers, for me, in my experience, are, like, so disengaged. So I try to do a lot of leadership workshops, a lot of empowerment workshops, and I get facilitators, I get venues, I try to make it very youth-friendly. But what tends to happen is, you know, the doors are open and nobody shows up. But I can see them on the streets. I can see them in the basketball courts. I see them. So how do I, like, get this message to them, give them what they need so they can make real sound decisions and, like you say, like, get back to a point where they're thinking, they're using their brains, they're not just following this kind of, like, herd mentality. Because that's really what it is. I believe in individuality. I believe in people being able to express their creativity and, you know, enjoying life and living and loving their lives, but at the same time, there is a greater world around us. Like, we have to learn how to coexist. We have to also learn how to be contributors to society. So, I want to, like, give those gifts to them or give those tools and resources to them, but they don't seem to want it.
Yeah.
So, do you have any, like, advice for me, a way that I could probably try to approach it?
Yes, I do. A lot of many people don't like some of the things that I preach, and one of the things that I preach is this: is that our young men and women are just mirrors of what we really think of ourselves. Because, see, they don't come into the world black on black crime. That means that they learn it from somebody. Now, a lot of things are buried in us old folks' subconscious that we don't even know are there. So, unconsciously, we teach our children to hate each other, to hate their color, to hate their kin, to hate people that are like them. That's unconsciously. So we have to understand that, and we have to change our procedures in order to move into another direction and solve these problems. And I have put those directions that we have to understand. See, the world moves on the spiritual mind. And until we develop a spiritual mind, then there can be no success.
Well, I'm definitely going to pick up your book, and I'm going to go on that the website that was listed. Yes,
take a look at it.
Thank you so much for your time and for blessing us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Bolden.
Well, brothers and sisters, I guess y'all
Mr.
about
Bolden.
sick of me now.
Mr. Bolden?
Yeah.
Hello, Mr. Bolden. Hello?
Wait, I'm here.
Hello, Mr. Bolden.
Is somebody trying to say something?
Yes, sir. That's me.
Can you hear me?
John.
Somebody needs to put their phone on mute. There's a lot of background noise.
All right. Not sure who that is. Can you hear me, Mr. Bolden?
Sure, I can hear you.
Sir, we have a ton of people that want to ask you questions, and we only have 3 minutes left. I was wondering if it is at all possible that we can get you to come back on Tuesday and just take some calls, because we got a lot of people that really were inspired by your story.
Well, this Tuesday that's coming?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I can, let's see, today is Thursday. Let me check my calendar and I'll let Shanika know. But right now, I think it's all clear right now. I think I'll be able to do that.
It would be a privilege and an honor, and we would greatly appreciate it.
Yes.
Okay.
I think I'll be able to arrange that. Next Tuesday,
Thank you
7
so
o'clock.
much.
You're welcome.
Yes, sir.
All right. I'll be talking to you Tuesday.
All right. Thank you so much. We look forward to it.
All right. Goodbye.
Thank you, Mr. Bolden. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, and I'm truly sorry for everybody that didn't get to answer a question. Zal, I didn't hang up on you, man. I would not do that to you, bruh. But thank you for taking this ride with us. This was absolutely phenomenal. Thank you, Queen. Thank you, Amber. This was humbling, to say the least.
I don't know what to say.
No problem at all.
Right. We got 1 minute. Y'all have a good night. When it's archived, I'll post it. Y'all share it, because this man's story definitely needs to be heard.
Hello? Indeed.
Wow. I don't know what to say at all.
Anybody hear me?
It ain't much to say after that one.
Can anybody hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Who
Who's
is
this?
that, Job?
Oh, hey, okay. I might not be able to call in next week, so because I'm getting ready to go for a field event. My name is Tone, and if y'all don't mind, could you please let Mr. Bolden know that as an individual that works for the United States government, I would really like to apologize for what he was treated. And my heart was like extremely broken today hearing that. Like I just got off work, man. And I'm like, they like, you all right? I'm like, bro, I'm gonna go to the car and smoke a cigarette. Like that hurt. And just let them know that I honestly apologize, and that being on the inside, I'm trying. I mean, I'm getting dogged hard by both black people and people in the military about my decision to go pro-black and study Pan-Africanism, and this shit hurt, man.
Well, I'll let them know, Tone, and I know what you're saying because I'll be following you, but just take it one step at a time. Don't let nobody discourage you.
Oh, yeah, no, I ain't going to be moved. I'm just saying it's crazy.
Yeah, very.
All right, well, y'all take it easy. I got to get back to fixing these trucks.
Okay, talk to you later.
Have a good night.
You too. God bless.
All right, we off the air already.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Peace out, lady. That was Queen. You, Jesus Christ, like you need to get every guest we ever get. Like,
Serious.
That was amazing.
Job, I'm gonna get Floyd Mayweather for you. That's who I'm gonna get. No.
You can't afford him. You don't deal with more people.
I'll be sneaky. I'll be sneaky and tell my cousin to call me while he on the phone with him. I mean, while he with him. Like, call me when you with Floyd Mayweather. Sneak him on the phone. No. Like, hell no.
All right, ladies. Well, I'm about to hang up and peace out.
Peace.
Bye.
All right. Wait, Amber.
Huh?
Did you get the email?
Yeah, I did. When are y'all having? Is there any like events or anything in the near future or in the whatever?
That's what I've been talking to him about because they haven't had many events lately. I've been trying to do something with the other like organization that I'm starting, but I'm trying to get them to start doing more stuff. So I'm gonna let you know when they get it
Keep
together.
me posted about your stuff too. Like, just keep me posted about anything.
Okay, I will.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Talk to y'all later.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye.
All right.